Patty here. I'm with Joe and Emily. Before Emily starts presenting her case, we just wanted to touch on what has been happening in the UK over the last 48 hours. Sadly, the body of Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old woman, has been found, and a Met police officer has been charged with her murder and arrested. We just wanted to touch on it because it's such an important issue that affects all women around the world. Sarah was literally walking home at 9:30 p.m. She was wearing a raincoat, she was wearing trainers. She had just got off the phone with her boyfriend and she was really close to her house. So, you know, it was just a normal evening for her, and she was just going home, and that didn't stop her from being kidnapped, attacked, and murdered. And we just wanted to talk about it because this is a reality for all women everywhere in every country.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, we're seeing on social media like all these posts, like it literally is happening to like all the women, all of them. Like,
it is
any form of sexual harassment or any harassment or anything like that. It's just affects us all.
Yeah,
I think every woman has probably got a tale of some sort of sexual harassment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been so normalized by the society, and it has been made women's problem.
Yeah,
but it is not our problem. It is men's problem. No one teaches men not to attack women, but everyone tells us that we need to be careful.
We can't go out after dark. We can't wear certain clothing. We have to be, safe and careful, and message our friends, and maybe not drink too much, and not take a taxi home because who knows what's going to happen. And not walk home alone either. So
you have to be polite to strangers. Always be polite to men.
Not too polite though, because they might take it a different way. But you don't want to be hostile because they might get angry.
So it's always has been, and we've all been taught it, that you need to take the precautions. As a woman, we need to take the precautions. No one's teaching men not to rape women, not to sexually harass women,
not even to make sexist jokes.
And
any sort of
we're not
comments.
we're not saying it's all men, but we are saying we don't know which men it is. Therefore, we are going to treat it like it is all men, because unless you're actively trying to stop it, and I don't see men actively protesting over this. It's almost as if they want a badge for not sexually harassing someone.
Not breaking someone in the park.
I
have seen few
completely
comments and seen few posts from men that they are trying to do their bit, in quotes, like they're trying to cross the road if they see a lone woman walking, and they potentially think, I'm big, am I presumed to be a threat, so either back away or move away. So yes, but it's just so few.
But
it's just so few.
We just don't, you don't know who it could be, and it could be anyone. And it takes those small steps, and I think it starts at home. It starts with parents teaching their kids, and it starts with people actually accepting responsibility and doing something about it. Because allegedly, obviously, a Met police officer has committed the crime and he has been charged with murder. This is a police officer. This is someone that's supposed to protect us and someone that we're supposed to turn to. So you just don't know where it's going to come from. But it's a big issue, and there has been so much controversy around it, and there really shouldn't be. It's a case of a woman got murdered.
There shouldn't. I think it's like that thing as well that goes back to people saying, oh, boys will be boys. And it's like, no, that's not. That's like, as a mother to a son, that is something I'm never going to allow to be said. It's not an excuse in any way.
No, not at all.
Just not at all.
Boys will still be held accountable to their actions. And if you are a man and you see your friends making funny, sexist jokes, you see them making comments, and say something, because it starts with you. It starts with the single people making a difference, and that's where it will change. But so far, this world is where we have to bring up little girls thinking of all these ways to protect themselves.
Well, there was I sent that
completely.
thing to you. There was a from Green Party, a representative have not really serious, but proposed that maybe there should be a curfew for men from 6 p.m. so to make women safe. She later admitted it wasn't totally serious, but the backlash from that, she received a death threats and so many messages, and there's so many horrific comments from men, but also some women as well, actually. And that's not a solution.
I've seen quite a few from women as well. They just don't seem to
and of course it wasn't,
they don't seem to be grasping the point, do they? It's like, well, it's not all men. No.
Yeah,
but it is all women.
Yeah, but it wasn't a realistic proposal. It just shows how the police can tell women to, after something like that happened, like the thing that happened to Sarah, just to be careful and stay at home, to go after dark, and we're supposed to be okay with it. But when it's something, proposed for men to keep us safe, it's just no. Why should I?
Yeah.
Why? Oh.
There have been endless times where I've walked home, and it wasn't even that late. It'd be around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, with keys in between my hands, phone in my hand, no headphones on, and constantly looking over my shoulder. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be allowed to go for walks. We should be allowed to do whatever the fuck we want. Yeah. And how about instead of telling women to be careful, we tell men to stop raping women?
And how dare you assume we're not careful? We've always been careful. We're always careful, but that's just, it's impossible to do so 100% of the time. But also, we are aware of what's around us at all times. So it's,
Well, so I think I've told you, I was, after my shift one time from work, I think it was about 6, 7, probably 6:30 evening, and I was just sat there waiting to be picked up from work by my partner, and looking at my phone, and then happened to look at the floor and see a cigarette drop right. And this is in the middle of town, it's not late, it's dark because it's the winter, but it's not late. Look up, and there's a man over my shoulder, literally his face is here. And I was like, what do you want? Like, oh, do you want to go for a drink? I was like, no, I do not want to go for a drink. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. Literally had to say it over and over again. And the only way I got him to go away was to say my boyfriend was picking me up. And then he was like, oh, okay. So I had to basically say I was the property of another man for another man to fuck off.
Yeah.
And
it's not okay. It really isn't. Wolf whistling,
no, it's not.
Like that. It's all sexual harassment. It is. It needs to be stopped.
And it's horrible. It's so intimidating. Well, like just.
Yeah, and then if you say,
the feeling it gives you is just horrible. Really on edge.
Yeah, it does. It makes you feel shit.
Yeah.
And then if you then tell that man to fuck off, or the group of men, then they start shouting abuse at you. So you can't win whether we tell them or not tell them.
Oh,
we're always losing.
You've got such a big ego.
So we just wanted to address it and say that we certainly hope that from this change will come, but I personally have very little hope for anything.
No, I think it's
shifting mindsets.
Yes, it's just making men aware of how we feel, and potentially there's a lot of articles online that sort of are directed at men, to not judgmental or anything, but to like with the tips of what they can do to make us feel safer. And even if you don't think you do anything, or you are a man and you are a threat to us, regardless of your intentions.
Yeah, it's just because it's so innate. We're going to see you as a threat, whether you are or aren't. To us, you will be a threat until proven otherwise. And that's just the sad reality of the world that women have to live with. Constant fear and constantly on edge. So we're hoping that Sarah will get her justice, and that the person responsible for this will be charged and they will be punished. And also we hope that this will push people to change and to do better.
We all need to do better.
So without further ado,
Yeah,
from
definitely.
that was quite heavy, but it needed to be said. Well, I'm going to hand the baton to Emily to.
It is her episode.
It is her episode.
Yeah, it's my case. Yeah, it's a bit different from what we were talking about just then.
Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit. This week I'm going to be doing the Dyatlov Pass incident, which, as Joe will be very happy about, is an unsolved mystery thing. It's not really a crime as such, but
yes, I know it's unsolved, but I've listened to a lot of things about it and it is interesting, so I do like it in quotes.
Okay, so Emily does an unsolved case and it's fine. I do an unsolved case and I'm the bad guy.
It's only because I know it.
And I also apologise because there's obviously a lot of Russian names and I'm going to try my best to pronounce them, but they are a bit difficult, so I might need a bit of help.
we can try.
We're here to help. I mean, Russian is so close to Polish.
Try.
Close enough, so
yeah.
Has it got the same sort of pronunciations or?
Yeah, like a little bit, because it's all Eastern European, so a lot of Eastern European surnames and stuff are similarly pronounced.
And if it's written like normal and not in their own alphabet, obviously we can read it.
Yeah, we can't read the alphabet, but if it's like a,
because otherwise I would have no clue.
Yeah, no, I know. It's so weird looking. All right.
Yeah, completely different, completely. Okay, so I jump right in. So in 1959, a skiing group took an expedition across the northern Urals in Sverdlovsk Oblast in the Soviet Union. So it's quite far back, 1959. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, and he was a 23-year-old radio engineering student, and he had assembled a group of 9 for the trip. Most of them were like his fellow students. And it was quite a mixed group, like male and female. It wasn't just like all men or all female or anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, actually, well, there's only 2 women, but there are women on like the expedition.
Yeah, more than one.
Back then. Yeah, so each member of the group was an experienced grade 2 hiker, and they would be receiving the grade 3 certification once they got back. So they were all like experienced. They knew what they were doing. It wasn't just like, we want to go out for a hike kind of thing.
So they were doing it for a purpose,
and
more than just they wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time, it was the highest certification like available in the Soviet Union. So
right.
And the route, so they knew what they were doing basically. Which is another reason as to why what happened is also so strange, which we'll go into, obviously. So the route was designed by Dyatlov's group to reach the far northern regions of Sverdlovsk Oblast and the upper streams of the Lozva River. And the route was approved by the City Route Commission, so people knew where they were going, and the goal was to reach a mountain called Gora Otorten. Again, sorry about the pronouncing is difficult.
Just do your best.
The route was undertaken. I'm going to do my best. The route was undertaken in February and was estimated a category 3, which was the most difficult time to traverse. So February was not like the best for like weather and conditions.
It's still winter.
Not entirely sure why they decided to do it that time of year. Yeah.
Really weird.
So on the 23rd of January 1959, Dyatlov's group was issued their route book. It listed their course as following the number 5 trail, and they left Sverdlov city on the same day. And then the group arrived by train at Ivdal in the early morning hours of January the 25th. They then took a truck to Vizhai, which is the last settlement along the way. So it's like a little town, village, pretty much in the middle of nowhere, from what I can gather. And they spent the night there and they bought bread to keep their like energy levels up, and that's pretty much, from what I can gather, that's what they had to eat.
Just bread.
Yeah, they seem to make a big thing of like they just bought bread, and that was to keep their energy levels up. I don't know.
no like meat, no protein.
But I suppose it's like 19. Maybe they already packed that. I don't know.
Just like an extra.
Yeah, but it just seems to make a big thing of the fact. Yeah. But there's obviously some sort of record of them being there and buying bread, so maybe that's why it's mentioned in the accounts. That's
probably it then.
Yeah. So on the January the 27th, they began their trek towards Gora O'Torton. And the January the 28th, one member called Yuri Yudin, he suffered from several health ailments, including rheumatism and a congenital heart defect. So he like turned back because he had like pain in his joints and his knees, and he was unable to continue the hike, which for him turned out pretty well.
Yeah,
as we'll find out.
His body soaked his life.
And then the remaining 9 hikers continued on. So there was diaries and cameras found around their campsite, which made it possible to track the group's route up to the day before the incident. So if you look online, there are like tons of photos that they took, which are quite interesting. Yeah. And the 31st of January, the group prepared for climbing. So in a valley, they collected surplus food and equipment for the trip back. And the next day, the hikers started to move through the pass. And it looks like they planned to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side. But because of bad weather, there was like snowstorms, so they couldn't see very well. They lost their direction and went west. They did realise their mistake, and they set up camp on the mountain rather than moving the 1.5 kilometres downhill to a forested sheltered area, which was probably because they didn't want to lose their altitude that they'd gained, rather than like having to go back on themselves so late. And Dyatlov was supposed to send a telegram to the sports club as soon as the group returned to Vizhai, which was no later than the 12th of February. So the 12th of February passed and there was no messages sent. People didn't really worry about it at first because it was quite a normal thing to happen. Like people get delayed.
Yeah.
Messages aren't so easy to send through. Yeah.
I guess it's not the
so
age
then
of,
on the 20th.
I guess it's not the age of the technology, is it?
Digital technology.
Yeah. So what we're saying is if they did run back on themselves and get the shelter like in the forest area or whatever you said, that potentially we wouldn't be talking about this case. Yeah, is that what we say?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I think so.
That's a bad decision.
Yeah. It's almost like a series of just like events aligned and they just buggered up for them, pretty much.
Yeah, a series of unfortunate events. Not like the book, you know?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Like the book. So on the 20th of February, relatives demanded a rescue operation consisting of volunteer students and teachers, because obviously they hadn't heard anything, and you would be by this point thinking, where the hell are they?
Yeah.
Later, the army and militia forces became involved, with planes and helicopters ordered to join the operations. There was a big search party for them, looking for them. It was obviously taken quite seriously.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So then on the 26th of February. Yeah.
Sorry. Where they? I don't know what I was gonna say. I don't know how I was gonna phrase it. It was so obviously it was a big search party, but because of the time of the year, was it difficult or was it?
I can imagine it probably would have been difficult.
I think there was obviously a lot of snow, but I'd imagine that would have just been the case anyway.
Yeah.
But from what I can gather, the weather had sort of cleared up a bit by this point.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like bad conditions that they were searching for them in.
So not too much risk for the search.
So then on the 26th of February. Yeah, exactly. So on the 26th of February, the group's abandoned and badly damaged tent was found. Yeah. Wasn't a great thing to find.
No.
And the state of the campsite baffled the search party.
So when
Like
you
it was
say
just it's just really bizarre the way it was all found.
yeah, so when you say the damaged tent, what sort of damage are we looking at? Is it claws and ripped, or I don't know.
Or is it just sort of like weather
Yeah,
damage?
so a student who was there found the tent, and he, in quotes, said the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left inside. So the tent had been cut open from the inside, essentially, and there was a big slash across the top.
From the inside. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
Yeah. Which, considering there's like a zip or,
yeah, it's a
you
bit
can untie these
aggressive.
tents. I'm not.
It just seems very
exactly.
panicky.
You'd be like, well, what's caused that to happen? Yeah.
Yeah, like
exactly.
in the panic. Yeah.
And the fact they'd left their belongings and their shoes in such cold weather as well. It's like, what?
Yeah, like what did they take? Like what was yeah. Sorry. Just what they I can't get my words out. Like
just what the fuck?
Because like basically what the fuck? Like you wouldn't do that, surely. Like you wouldn't do that, especially if they're experienced hikers. You just wouldn't do that.
So they went barefoot wherever they went.
No, it's basically if you don't take your shoes with you and your belongings, it's a death sentence essentially in that weather. Like you're not going to be okay.
Yeah.
So there was 9 sets of footprints left by people wearing only socks or a single shoe, or even barefoot, that could be followed, leading down the edge of nearby woods on the opposite side of the pass, 1.5 kilometers to the northeast. And after 500 meters, these tracks were covered with snow, so they just stopped after 500 meters.
What?
And at the forest edge, under a large pine tree, the searchers found the visible remain of a fire.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, a little fire.
So there was a fire like far away from the from the tent.
Like a
little way away.
Yeah, like 500 meters away.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
Did they get lost and couldn't find a tent, and then they just?
I don't know. Okay, carry on. I think we need to listen to more.
I think there's going to be a lot of the
yeah.
from us because it's baffling.
So this small campfire was where the first 2 bodies were found, those of Krivonishenko and Doroshenko, who were shoeless and dressed only in underwear. And the trees around them, some of the branches were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting that one of them had climbed up to look for something.
What were they looking for?
Which is odd, isn't it?
Yeah, so it does seem like they got lost from the tent, or maybe in a panic they run. They wanted to come back, they couldn't find it, set up a fire, and then died of hypothermia because they took their clothes off, and like one of the last stages is you get really hot or you're not hot. Sort of.
But so were they?
Yeah.
But where's everyone else?
Still really bizarre. Why did they flee?
Like what? Just what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
I want more.
Like what were they climbing up the trees to look for?
Yeah.
There's no signs of the camp being in disarray as such. It's just literally the tent has been ripped open, and that's pretty much all there is.
That's very strange.
Very strange.
Unless were they looking for something, or were they trying to hide from someone by climbing up?
Exactly. We'll find out.
Something.
Kind of. So between the tree and the camp, the searchers found 3 more corpses. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova and Slobodin, which they were in poses which suggested they were trying to return to the tent. They were found at distances of 300, 480 and 630 meters from the tree. So they were all staggered the way they were found. They weren't all found together.
So it seems like they left as a group and then collapsed one after the other.
But what was the cause of death? Oh, are we going to come to that?
Yeah, we'll come to that. It was ruled as hypothermia, though.
Yeah. Well,
but then given all the other things that was going on, it's... So finding the remaining 4 travellers took more than 2 months, and finally they were found on the 4th of May under 4 meters of snow in a ravine 75 meters into the woods. 3 of the 4 were dressed better than the others, and there were signs that those who had died first had their clothes taken by the others.
I mean,
so they were obviously trying to keep warm.
Anymore.
Yeah.
What were they running away from?
Well, I don't know.
This is the thing. This is the mystery.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of theories. So
there was wearing. Yeah, there's a lot of theories, like endless theories. Tons of them. So Dubinina was wearing Krivonishenko's burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket. A large inquest was started immediately after the first 5 bodies were found. And going back to cause of death, a medical examination found no injuries that might have led to their deaths, and it was concluded that they all had died of hypothermia.
But what? Just hypothermia? Nothing else? There was nothing weird? No drugs? No hallucinogenic stuff?
That's what it seems like, right?
Yeah, it seems like because why would they all leave the tent? Unless some of them left the tent, then the others went to look and then they couldn't find the tent. But still, just hypothermia and nothing else?
I know. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Slobodin had a small crack in his skull, they discovered, but it wasn't fatal. Not really sure what caused that exactly. An examination of the 4 bodies found in May changed things pretty much. So it went from being, hypothermia caused by strange circumstances to there being a lot of unexplained injuries. 3 of the hikers had fatal injuries. One of them had major skull damage, and Dubinina and Zolotayov had major chest fractures. The force required to, for this chest fracture would have been extremely high. Something like a car crash, they had determined it to be, the force of it.
Where's the car?
Yeah. But I don't think it literally means a car.
Okay.
Something of that.
Okay. So like a boulder, like falling on the chest, sort of thing.
Okay.
Just
so there is no car. There's no car. Okay.
There's no car. Compared it to that, like the force of a car.
Okay.
But the strange thing was that there was no tissue damage or wounds on the outside of the body. It was just all internal.
What? Aliens.
Yeah.
What?
But some sort of radiation?
Yeah, so bone fractures.
Of some sort? What else would it be?
Yeah, there was radiation found on one, but not all of them.
Like sound waves weapon? I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm trying to.
Anyway, back to life, back to reality. All
right. Yeah, so all 4 bodies found at the bottom of the creek in a running stream of water had soft tissue damage to their head and face, which is, well, if you're in a stream, it's kind of normal, I suppose, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Juvenina was missing her tongue. Like, I've heard that it's become, over the years, her whole tongue was gone. But then there's also reports to say a bit of it, which is just normal decomposition or scavenging, and animals had taken it. Her eyes were missing and part of her lips, as well as facial tissue and a fragment of her skull bone. So yeah, she wasn't in a great way.
No, she was not, Emily.
Not at all.
But could that be down to animals too? Like the eyes and the tissue and stuff?
Not necessarily the skull, but the rest.
Not the skull, but the rest you could kind of argue could have been animals.
Yeah, I think also your eyes are obviously very soft tissue. I think they decompose quite quickly.
Oh yeah, that's true. Really want to poke my eye now.
Don't do it. You're never gonna get it back.
Thanks, Joe.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So Zolotaryov had his eyeballs missing as well, and Alexander I can't even say his name. His eyebrows. I'm not even going to try because I'm getting them wrong. I've tried to listen to documentaries and practice it, and it's just not going in at all.
No, it's really hard, isn't it?
They're long ones as well. They're not like short sellers. They're quite long.
I think it's Kolevatov. I want to go with
Yeah.
that.
Go with that.
Kolevatov.
We'll go
Yeah,
with
his
that,
eyebrows were gone
Kolevatov.
as well.
Eyebrows. Well, like
Yeah, his eyebrows.
Like waxed off, or well, obviously
yeah,
not waxed off.
He went
but
for a little like touch up.
obviously not waxed off. But how do you even miss an eyebrow unless you?
It's gone, like dissolved.
That's so
Rotted
weird.
off.
Very strange parts
But
of
then
bodies are
maybe-
missing.
Yeah, but then maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to think of maybe he was the way he was buried. His like this sort of part of his face was uncovered first, so that it started rotting first,
Maybe.
possibly, or animals were able to get to it first.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So the post-mortem examination determined the injuries happened post-mortem due to the location of the bodies in a stream. There was also speculation that the indigenous Mansi people who lived in the area, like a little tribe, had attacked and murdered the group for encroaching upon their lands.
Okay, that doesn't explain.
And several
all
were
the weird
interrogated,
shit.
but no, exactly, yeah. But they were investigated, and yeah, it was pretty much determined that they wouldn't have done it. It indicated the hikers' footprints were only visible. There's no sign of hand-to-hand struggle, so it was only the hikers' footprints and none of the Mansi people. So it was like, well, they couldn't have been there at all. And also, they were apparently quite a peaceful people who'd shelter visitors if they needed it. So there was no reason for them to attack.
Yeah.
anyone. Yeah. So although the temperature was low at the time of the incident, it was apparently around -25 to -30 degrees Celsius, and it was stormy. The dead, as we've discovered, were only partly dressed, like with only one shoe or only one sock. And journalists reporting at the time said that 6 of the group members died of hypothermia and 3 of fatal injuries. There was no other indications of other people nearby. The tent had been ripped open from within, and the victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal, because they looked in the stomach, obviously, in a post-mortem. But there was a strange thing that I read, that one of the women had blood in her stomach, which could have been from internal bleeding, but it seemed like there was quite a lot. So I'm not really sure what that would mean. Just another strange thing to add to it.
That's so bizarre.
Besides of drinking blood, I
Yeah,
don't know where it
I
could
mean,
come
I was going to
from.
say that, but I thought perhaps well,
Mm.
not just that, but it was
Strange.
just kind of like, where would the blood? Whose blood
Yeah.
was she drinking? If she did,
Mm.
or maybe she ate
Yeah.
like a raw animal to survive, or I don't know. But then you'd get really
It's
ill.
like they had they had food though. It was just like the same night that they'd set up a camp there. It's not like they were there for weeks on end, like starving. They'd had supplies. Like it was
So
left behind.
weird.
So just
I feel like one of them brought some
Um,
sort of drugs of some sort of something that will make them hallucinate, and it just happened. Because otherwise,
hallucinogenic,
what else could it be? Do rabies make you go crazy? Yeah, but it takes a while. Yeah, but
it doesn't happen. Yeah, it's not just like.
I know, but they could
over.
someone could have been bitten like before and then just. Yeah, but then they would bite the other person. It would take a while for it to take effect. No, but then maybe that person went and started chasing everyone with the knife to kill them. That's why I'm going for that. Maybe like one of the group.
Then if it was, they'd find a knife surely. Then wouldn't they? They didn't find anything like that.
I am just trying to come with solutions. I thought rabies might be a good idea, but apparently not.
And going with that as well, like the knife thing, traces from the camp showed that all the group members left the campsite of their own accord on foot. So it wasn't like their footsteps were erratic. It was literally like they were just walking in a straight line to some location.
That is so weird. Also,
and going
really
back
weird
to
that all of that, all of the footsteps survived, because it was some time after.
Yeah, like 500 meters worth of footsteps. Yeah. And going back to the radiation thing, it was found on only one of the victims' clothing, which people have speculated is a strange thing, but apparently the person whose clothing it was found on had worked in something to do with radiation, so it wasn't unusual for it to be found on.
It means nothing.
Yeah, apparently. So it was said that the fatal injuries of the three bodies could not have been caused by human beings because the force of the blows had been too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged other than what had happened post-mortem. And there was no information about the condition of the skiers' internal organs. And obviously there's no survivors to recount anything, so it was just trying to go off the information that was given from the scene. Yeah.
So weird.
And overall, it is so weird, like literally so weird. And then in the end, the verdict was that the group had died because of a compelling natural force, and the files were sent to a secret archive.
Well, that's not compelling natural force. What's the force? So aliens. I'm with you, Joe. Now aliens.
Yes. It does make you think, doesn't it? It's like, well,
what else?
Yeah. And why are you keeping it all secret and sending it into
this? Yeah, it's all dodgy. It's very dodgy.
Thing is, though, it's like Soviet Russia, and everything was kept quiet back then. So although it seems strange, it's actually not that strange for them to have done that. It was just what they would do. Everything was hidden.
I know, but it's just that what I find weird is that natural compelling force. Well, what? It's a weird. What is the natural compelling force? Please explain. Please elaborate.
Cold snow. I guess that's what
they seem to be going with like this avalanche theory. That seems to be the main one. Yeah. In 1997, the negatives from Krivonishenko's camera, which had been kept in a private archive of one of the investigators, Lev Ivanov, was revealed. So that's how we have all those photographs of what had led up to this point. The film material was donated by Ivanov's daughter to the Dyatlov Foundation and fell into Russia's public domain in 2009. So it's not that long ago that it was made public knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder why it took them so long.
Considering how long ago it Which is why it's like so many theories have popped up, because you keep the information quiet, people are going to speculate and try and figure it out, aren't they? So this is why it's become this whole phenomenon.
Yeah, and the longer the more time passes, the more elaborate theories become, right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when there's no one around. I mean, it's 1959 this happened. There's no one you can really go to as such to be like, what happened? What did you see? You know, it's only a few people. Yeah, so in February 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation, although only 3 possible explanations were being considered. So they ruled out everything apart from an avalanche or a snow slab avalanche or a hurricane. And that was the 3 things that they were going with. Nothing else was like taken into consideration.
Right.
Right, I can kind of see the avalanche, so they would in a panic flee the tent, and one of them like managed to climb up the tree, but obviously can't stay there
To see
or
where
just
the
fell,
avalanche
or,
is.
or whatever. I suppose.
Yeah.
It's just so unsatisfying.
I find,
But then these are
the thing I find difficult to like believe about an avalanche is the fact that the tent wasn't covered in snow. If there was an avalanche, they would have cut their way out of the tent because it was surrounded by snow.
Yeah, and also they are experienced hikers. So if there was an avalanche, you would think that they would then not just abandon all their stuff, they would gather it really quickly and then carry on because they're experienced hikers. They would know that they need to.
Yeah. And also most experienced like hikers know where to set up camp, you know, because they'd have an idea if it was an avalanche where the path of it would go. So that doesn't really make much sense either. Like you're assessing your surroundings all the time.
Yourself safe.
Yeah.
So weird. I don't like this.
Weird.
Emily, I don't like it.
I like it because of how weird it is.
I like it because of how weird it is as well. So we're going to go on to related reports. Ooh. 12-year-old Yuri Kuntsevich attended 5 of the hikers' funerals at the time, and he recalled that their skin had a deep brown or orangey tan, and that their hair had turned grey.
What?
Why?
Yeah.
Is there any photos of that?
There's photos, but they're black and white, unfortunately.
Oh.
Yeah. But there's been a few like accounts of saying that like they did look orangey brown and like their hair had literally turned grey.
That's weird.
But it has been put down to possibly a type of mummification caused by the elements in the area. But it does just, I mean, I've seen mummies and they don't go orange. There we are. I suppose it's a different type of.
Yeah, but their hair's staying the same colour, right? Like,
yeah, why would their hair go grey?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think they're like.
It doesn't seem like it's enough time as well. Mummification, like it wasn't that long.
And then it was cold, so wouldn't that stop stuff? Like, you know, composition.
Yeah, like
composition
it would
and
stop.
stuff.
Yeah.
It would at least slow it down.
Yeah. So in the area at the time, there were another group of hikers, and they reported that they saw strange orange spheres in the sky on the night of the incident. And similar spheres were seen in February to March in 1959 by various witnesses, including the Meteorology Service and the military.
Aliens!
Oh, aliens!
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 Oh, you know, whatever subhuman was doing.
Extraterrestrial, other human form, something else.
Do we have any pictures of this
Yeah.
spheres, or?
There is only like one of the photos found of the guy who had the camera, of like these strange lights. Obviously it's all black and white again, but it's like strange unfocused lights, and it's like we know what would have caused that in like the environment they were in. So people assume that photo is like one of the last photos, and it's of these supposed lights in the sky. But at the time of the 1959 investigation, these sightings weren't noted, and various witnesses only came forward years later.
Right.
So,
So
whether it's because they didn't say anything or it just wasn't noted down, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe at the time they didn't think it was perhaps important enough to mention, and then the more they thought about it, and like with the case becoming so weird and so like quiet, like people thought, oh, maybe I should mention that I saw some orange spheres in the sky when this happened.
Yeah. Or maybe they're lying.
Yeah.
Like again, it's the time of Soviet Russia, isn't it, where everyone just sort of keeps their mouth shut about things.
Yeah.
It seems. So if there was anything strange, people would want to speak up about it. I
Don't want to draw attention to yourself, do you?
Yeah. Nope. So the aftermath of all this, in 1990, Lev Ivanov, who led the official inquest in 1959, wrote an article that included his admission that the investigation team had no rational explanation of the incident. He also said that after his team reported that they had seen flying spheres, he received direct orders from high-ranking regional officials to dismiss the claim. He was told to shut up, pretty much.
Well, it's either obviously aliens or whatever
or the government.
Soviet Union was doing and didn't want anyone to know.
Missiles.
Maybe.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah.
Could have been like not training, but testing their military equipment, couldn't they? So they maybe didn't want people to know.
Yeah.
But aliens.
In 1999, aliens. Always could be aliens. You never know. Can't prove otherwise.
Nope.
In 1999, the Dyatlov Foundation was founded, and it aimed to continue the investigation of the case and to maintain the Dyatlov Museum, which was basically to keep the memory of the dead hikers alive. So I suppose if people had any information as well, it would keep people coming forward.
Yeah. And
on the 1st of July in 2016, a memorial plaque was dedicated to Yuri Yudin, who was the sole survivor at the expedition, the one who had turned back to begin with, because he died in 2013.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And I suppose...
I think it did plague him like his whole life, I think, what happened.
Sorry, there's a slight delay, so I'm not trying to interrupt, Emily. It's just there's a slight delay. I was just going to say, I suppose he didn't hear anything weird from the people that went out, or like didn't confirm or deny whether there were any hallucinogenic drugs or anything like that. I guess he didn't.
Nothing about any plans or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. There doesn't seem to be that much about him. I mean, there might be. I haven't gone into it as in depth as I think as some people probably have. I would be interested to hear if anyone has anything about him. But I do think it did sort of plague him his whole life, like the guilt, I suppose, that all of his friends had gone on this expedition and died and he had survived it.
Yeah.
It would be a strange thing to happen, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because you sort of
have a clue what happened to them.
Yeah, because you're sort of happy you didn't go, because that means you live, but you also
all your friends are dead.
All your friends are dead, and you don't really know what happened and why, and potentially if you were there, would you make a different decision, and would they be all alive now?
Yeah,
who knows? It's must have been horrible.
It's a strange one. Yeah, completely. And for him to not know as well, just to not have a clue what had happened, like everyone else, no one really actually knows what happened to them. It's just horrible. Yeah.
It would make you scared to go on an expedition yourself, I guess.
It would, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So explanations of what could have happened to the expedition was, obviously we've talked about the avalanche. And on July the 3rd, 2020, it was announced that the avalanche was the official cause of death for the group. So yeah, not that long ago, 2020.
Oh, so they explained everything,
and
did they? And it makes sense to them. Is that?
Yeah, they gave like a, I've got it here, I'll read it to you.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
That the group woke in a panic. Yeah, they said the group woke in a panic and cut their way out of the tent, either because an avalanche had covered the entrance to their tent or because they were scared that an avalanche was imminent. And they were poorly clothed because they had been sleeping and ran to the safety of the nearby woods where trees would help slow oncoming snow. In the darkness, they got separated into 2 or 3 groups. One group made a fire, which apparently caused burns on their hands because some of them had burns on their hands and they think this is what caused it, while the others tried to return to the tent to recover their clothing since the danger had passed. So it would have been too cold and they all froze to death before they could locate their tent in the darkness. And at some point, some of the clothes may have been recovered or swapped from the dead. The group of 4 whose bodies were most severely damaged were caught in an avalanche and buried under 4 meters of snow, more than enough to account for the compelling natural force the medical examiner described. And Dubinina's tongue was likely removed by scavengers. So that was their official word on what had happened.
Yeah, I don't like it because it kind of makes sense, and I don't like that. And also I didn't take into account.
Not weird enough.
No, and I didn't take into account that it could have been night. That's why they couldn't find their way to the tent, which is disappointing.
Oh no, I thought it was night because they were undressed. So I thought they were probably, but then it was cold. Why were they undressed?
Well, not.
Well, yeah. They were obviously there's evidence contradicting the avalanche theory.
Oh yeah, love that. Let's get into that.
So the location didn't have any obvious signs of an avalanche, which would have left debris.
Yeah,
this is what I was saying with the tent. It wasn't covered in snow or anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's great. There's an avalanche, but there's no actual signs of an avalanche around.
Fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, so the first bodies were found covered with a shallow layer of snow, and if the avalanche had been strong enough to sweep away their bodies, these bodies would have been swept away as well. And it would have caused more serious injury to the process and damaged the tree line. So there would have been an obvious sign of an avalanche, it would have, the tent wouldn't have just been left intact.
And surely their bodies would have...
It might have been ripped, but it was still...
Yeah, and surely their bodies would have been somewhat buried.
Yeah, and then the search party would have been like, oh yeah, I see what happened here. It was avalanche. It's obvious, I can see it. Like sort of thing, right? Even, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So over 100 expeditions to the area were held since the incident, and none of them ever reported conditions that might create an avalanche. And a study of the area using up-to-date terrain-related physics revealed that the location was entirely unlikely for an avalanche to have occurred. So
there wasn't one.
It doesn't seem likely at all.
So how did they... so what did they use to be like, yeah, it was avalanche? What sort of evidence? Like, what?
What was the reason?
When there's so many contradictory, scientific evidence that it couldn't have happened.
I think it was literally the damage done to their bodies, like the force of it. That was the only thing they could think of that would fit, but it doesn't fit anything else.
So it's just basically like, I don't know, well, insert a metaphor that relates to this.
But so it's basically because they wanted an explanation.
The mountain, there's snow, it's got to be an avalanche.
Yeah, just because they wanted an explanation, probably.
Yeah.
And just to shut it down and maybe
Which
so people
makes me
speculate.
more
Yeah, pretty much.
suspicious.
Hmm.
So as we said, Dyatlov was an experienced skier and much older than Zoloratov. And neither of these two men had been likely to camp anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. And footprints leading away from the tent were not consistent with a group of 9 people running in panic from real or imagined danger. So all the footprints heading towards the woods were consistent with people walking at a normal pace, which you wouldn't do if there was an avalanche.
No. Could they have
Argued, like a big argument,
when they all left the tent?
and like a couple of them slashed the tent in an anger and then started like run away, and everyone
there was
else
no
just
running?
ran up or walked away
What,
angrily.
calmly walks away?
Yeah, there's no evidence.
I don't know.
I think that's no. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. I much more believe the avalanche.
Well, you can storm the way without running. You can still like storm
why would
away
you
from
slash a
Thing is, though,
tent?
in this, your tent is the only thing keeping you potentially from the elements as well in this weather. Like if you fuck up your tent, then you're dead in
Yeah,
this
exactly.
situation. So
I mean,
I don't.
I feel like if you're angry enough with everyone in the tent, you could just do it. I believe that.
Just, I don't know.
I feel like I would. In a fit of anger, you don't necessarily think rationally. Especially maybe when you're like irritated and hungry and spend too much time with these
They had
people.
food. Why were they hungry?
No.
People are hungry even if they have food.
Well, they could have eaten it.
Maybe they didn't fancy it.
Well, I'm just saying, Joe. I'm just pointing out holes in your theory,
Okay,
which is very holy.
Alright.
Anyway,
So, yeah, anyway. In 2015, there was a repeated investigation. So the review of the 1959 evidence completed in 2015 to 2019 by the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation on request of the families confirmed the avalanche with several important details added. So they're going back to the avalanche thing again, but then this time they have more information, apparently. So the first was the ICRF investigators confirmed that the weather on the night was very harsh, with wind speeds up to hurricane force, with 20 to 30 meters per second, which is 45 to 67 miles per hour. So, yeah,
okay.
it's a bit different to what they originally said, where it was like not the best weather, but not awful. And there was a snowstorm apparently, and temperatures reaching minus 40 degrees Celsius. And these factors weren't considered by the 1959 investigators who arrived at the scene 3 weeks later when the weather had improved. And any remains of a snowslide had settled and been covered with a fresh snowfall. So they're saying the harsh weather played a critical role in the events of the tragic night. Yeah, so on the 1st of February, the group, this is what their account was, the 1st of February, the group arrives at the mountain and sets up a large 9-person tent on the open slope without any natural barriers. Heavy snowfall continued with strong wind and frost. The group traversing through the slope and digging in the tent into the snow weakens weakens the snow base. So they're basically saying that the snow is falling around the tent and they're digging their way out so they don't become buried, basically. During the night, the snow above the tent starts to slide down under the weight of the new snow, gradually pushing on the tent fabric, starting from the entrance. So the group wakes and starts evacuation in panic, with only some able to put on warm clothes. And because the entrance was blocked, the group escapes through a hole cut in the tent fabric and descends the slope to find a place safe from the avalanche 1,500 meters down to the forest border. And due to some of the members having incomplete clothes, the group splits up. 2 of the group, only in their underwear and pajamas, were found at the pine trees near a fire pit, and their bodies were found first and confirmed to have died from hypothermia. And 3 hikers, including Dyatlov, attempted to climb back to the tent, possibly to get sleeping bags. They had better clothes than those at the fire pit, but were still not dressed well enough, and their footwear was incomplete. So, as we said, their bodies were like sort of found at different stages away from each other. So the bodies were found at various placings ranging from 300 to 600 meters from the campfire in poses suggesting they fell of exhaustion while trying to climb in deep snow in extremely cold weather. So the remaining 4, equipped with warm clothes and footwear, were trying to find or build a better camping place in the forest further down the slope. So their bodies were found 70 meters from the fireplace, under thick layers of snow and with traumas indicating they fell into a snow hole formed above a stream. And these bodies were only found after 2 months. And according to the ICRF investigators, the factors contributing to the tragedy were extremely bad weather and lack of experience of the group leader in such conditions, which led to the selection of a dangerous camping place. And after the snowslide, another mistake of the group was to split up rather than building a temporary camping place down in the forest and trying to survive through the night. So negligence of the 1959 investigators contributed to their report, creating more questions than answers and inspiring numerous conspiracy theories. That's pretty much what their new kind of explanation of what happened was. So not too different from the other ones, but just saying that like
it does make a little bit
the
more
main
sense,
driving force of it.
but I'm still a little bit like, even in panic, an experienced hiker, if they wanted any rate of survival, you would at least grab the clothing.
You would at least grab whatever you can grab.
You wouldn't just run out of the tent. Because you're going to die anyway then.
No. I understand they were probably like half asleep and stuff, but I just feel like they were aware of where they were, so they but they, I don't know.
Like I just know that even though I've never been on anything like this, any expedition, like anything, I just know that if you don't have the right clothing, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So you need to get it.
You're not going to survive the night. Yeah.
And these people are experienced. Yeah.
Yeah. Therefore, I just don't know if I
completely
can fully accept that explanation.
I mean, it makes more sense and it is more believable, but it's just
not believable enough.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
No. Yeah. So there are other like explanations people have come up with.
Is one
calling a katabatic wind. Yeah, there is one that's aliens. But this one's called a katabatic wind. So in 2019, a Russian-Swedish expedition was made to the site, and they proposed that a violent katabatic wind was a likely explanation for the incident. And katabatic winds are rare, but they can be extremely violent. And it's basically a wind that carries high-density air from a higher elevation down a slope under the force of gravity. So they're found where there are elevated ice sheets or snowy high plateaus reasonably close to lower, relatively warmer areas. So at night, the plateau radiates heat, cooling the air, increasing the cold, dry air mass and making it denser. And this happens till it spills over any natural barriers like mountain ranges. And then gravity drags the cold, dense, dry air down the slope. And if they have a valley to funnel down, they have been known to reach wind speeds of more than 100 miles per hour.
All right.
So that could account, I suppose, for the injuries and them panicking. So a sudden katabatic wind would have made it impossible to remain in the tent, and the most rational course of action would be for the hikers to shelter in the trees. And there was also a torch left turned on top of the tent, which was possibly so the hikers could find their way back to the tent once the wind subsided. And the expedition proposed the group of hikers constructed 2 bivouac shelters, one of which collapsed, leaving 4 of the hikers buried with the violent injuries.
Oh, okay.
I think that sounds quite plausible.
That sounds a lot more plausible.
Yes, I would say so. Definitely.
That's a lot. I'm more willing to believe that that's happened, because then perhaps it would explain why they were so much more panicked, because they may have not expected that.
Yeah.
And they knew
it's not something you would expect, is it? I mean, I've never heard of it before.
No.
Yeah. And they knew they might have been able to come back to the tent quicker than if it was avalanche, right?
Yeah. So another hypothesis is a thing called infrasound, which is that wind going around Kholat's cycle, which was the mountain, created a Kármán vortex street, which can produce infrasound capable of inducing panic attacks in humans. So infrasound generated by the wind as it passed over the top of the mountain was responsible for causing physical discomfort and mental distress in hikers. So it's like this weird phenomenon with just a noise which can tap into a frequency which causes panic attacks in humans.
That's weird.
And they think because of their panic, the hikers were driven to leave the tent and fled down the slope. And by the time they were further down the hill, they would have been out of the infrasound's path and would have regained their composure. But in the darkness, they would have been able to return to their shelter.
That makes sense.
And three of the traumatic injuries suffered. Yeah, it does. I think so. So the traumatic injuries suffered by 3 of the victims were the result of their stumbling over the ledge of a ravine in the darkness and landing on the rocks at the bottom of it. And if you were in a state of panic, that would explain why they did leave their clothes behind and the things they needed to wear,
Yeah, I could accept that. That's also a plausible explanation. So far, they're doing better than the Soviet government.
The official statements.
And there's also the thing we were talking about earlier, which was military testing. So, speculation exists that the campsite fell within a path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise. And this theory alleges that the hikers, by loud explosions, fled the tent in a shooters panic and found themselves unable to return. So after some members froze to death, others took their clothing, only to be fatally injured by subsequent parachute mine concussions. And there's records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military in the area around the time the hikers were there. So basically, parachute mines detonate while still in the air, and they can produce injuries similar to those experienced by the hikers, with heavy internal damage with less external trauma. So that would explain the force.
Yeah. Again.
Very plausible.
And it also goes hand in hand with the sightings of the glowing orange orbs floating in the sky. That was seen supposedly at the time. That would explain it,
Yeah, and that would explain why they want everyone to think it was avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though it makes no little sense. Yeah.
See, these are
would explain as well why they weren't.
Explanations than an avalanche.
Yeah. Some speculate that the bodies were naturally manipulated due to the characteristic livor mortis markings, which are purplish blue discoloration of the skin in parts of the body due to the collection of blood in skin vessels, as well as burns to skin and hair. So that, I suppose, might explain the weird orange skin, possibly, and the grey hair. I don't know.
That's still a bit weird.
Photographs of the tent allegedly show that it is strange. But the photographs at the time show that the tent was put up incorrectly, which people think is something the hikers wouldn't have been able to have done. They wouldn't do that wrong. So they think maybe it was something to do with the military putting it up to make it like nothing had happened there. And a similar theory alleges that the testing of radiological weapons, partly based on the discovery of radioactivity on some of the clothing as well as the bodies, also explain the orange skin and grey hair.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. All of these sound a lot
And as
more
we said,
plausible.
And the thing is as well, like the Soviet would, like Russia would have covered this up at the time because they just didn't want people knowing about any of the weapons that they had. It was all very secretive. So
and now it's too
if
late.
this was true, we wouldn't know.
Yeah, now it's too late to sort of say,
Turn around and be like,
actually, it was
sorry.
this, we were lying, you know. They would just not do that, would they?
Yeah, and there's that thing as well that you mentioned earlier about the paradoxical undressing. When people get to a state of hypothermia, they feel like they're burning, so they take their clothes off.
Even though she did.
That would
Because you get hot, it makes you think you're warm.
Yeah.
That's how people die.
So that would explain why maybe they had such a state of undress, possibly.
Maybe. Interesting.
Yeah. There was also a stove that they used in the tent, which was like a stove you could have inside, but the sort of piping went outside to filter the smoke outside, and it was a homemade device made by the leader of the group, so it wasn't like a thing that people used when doing these type of expeditions, but he'd made it himself. And there's like a theory that suggests
the smoke inhalation.
That it had gone wrong. After removing the exhaust pipe, the embers inside the stove were accidentally reignited, and the tent would have been filled with smoke like instantly, and that's why they cut the tent open to try and get out and try and filter.
Again, that's quite plausible.
Yeah, but would they go so far away from the tent, or not just wait for it to?
Well, that's just it. It's like you don't need to go that far from the tent.
Yeah, you don't have to flee
to get away from it.
Yeah,
no, that's true.
And there's like plenty of snow around for you to put out any possible fire, so it does seem a bit strange. Yeah, but there are photos of them to suggest, like, that were taken at the time to suggest that maybe the stove wasn't that great, because it looks like one of them, while still alive, this was before the accident, it looks like his clothing is all burnt up. So he's still wearing his coat, but it looks like it is all burnt up. And that would explain possibly the stove had done that. Several members of the group were found with blood around their mouths. They were coughing up blood, which would also be a symptom of smoke inhalation. So that would explain why there was blood possibly in her stomach. But like we said, they didn't need to go down a mile down the hill to escape the tent, and the smoke is just not that.
You just go outside.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can unzip.
And there is also the factor of there is also the weakness of the theory is that apparently the stove was unassembled and still in its case when they inspected the
why are you even talking about this? Like, what?
Because there's photos of it. That might not be true, and there's photos of it set up on the tent, so it definitely used at one point. So
I see. But it was when it was found, it was sort of pulled together.
Supposedly not set up with the tent.
Not set up.
Which could suggest that there was which could suggest that they didn't use it, or there was some sort of interference from the military. So they didn't put it back together the way they found it.
This is ridiculous.
Oh dear. Come on, are we coming to aliens now?
Almost. I'm just trying to see if I have. I don't want to read anything out that isn't like that important to it.
Yeah.
Just other than like there was people at the time who insisted that the case was like shut down, and like pretty much every theory has been discredited in some way. There's
Yeah.
not really anything that seems to be.
Sticking.
Yeah. So there are other theories, which was the Yeti theory. There is a photograph that they found on the camera of what appears to be like a Yeti type figure in the background. But I've seen the photo and it looks like it's just one of the group, like sort of blurry in the forest.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
There's also a theory of extraterrestrials, as we've said. There's also another one of them being mistaken for Gulag prison camp escapees.
Oh.
So at the time there was like, yeah, so they at the time there was like the essentially like prison concentration camp type things, and people could have thought they had escaped from that and then they were executed because of that. There's also the theory of mushrooms. They could have taken hallucinogenic mushrooms. But the post-mortem details don't seem to be that widely available. When they did the post-mortem, one of the guys that was there was saying that the guy who was watching over it was there for 3 full days, and he'd never known that to happen before. So it seems strange that he would have been there for just 3 days, just watching everything that had happened, almost like he was trying to make sure that something was covered up.
And I
So we don't know exactly apparently what was in the post-mortem.
But surely if they had taken hallucinogens, like that would have been an easy way
exactly. You
to
think they would
explain
come out
the
with
incident.
It. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So why would they cover that?
People have said as well that it could have been, yeah, exactly. But people have said as well that it could have been done, like, down to what you were saying, Joe, with like them having a fight because they'd got drunk or something, but there was only like 1 small flask of medicinal alcohol with them. There's no other signs of anything like alcohol. And they was also saying that maybe there was sexual tension. They'd had a fight over one of the women that was there with them. And I did read that apparently some sort of post-mortem test on one of the bodies of the women to see if she could have possibly been involved with any of the men, but she hadn't, apparently. So yeah, that was to put that theory to rest, apparently. There was nothing to suggest that was anything more than
they couldn't control themselves.
So that's pretty much they seem to all be very like platonic and friendly people.
This is all very crazy.
It is. There was one thing, about there could have been something to do with a spy in the group, because there was one member of the group who wasn't a friend of theirs. He'd sort of tagged on afterwards, like he joined the group later, and he wasn't a friend like the rest of them were, and there possibly he was a spy and he had to get to this area to then meet whoever he was meant to be meeting, and then they killed the rest of the group. But it does seem strange that they would go to those lengths.
Yeah.
So, and also he died too, so it doesn't make much sense.
So that didn't work
there
very
was
well,
no survivors.
Well, it depends. Maybe they found out he was a spy and they chased them and killed them all. Whoever the spy was
maybe
against, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
But there are literally endless theories and also endless ways of saying these theories don't work.
Yeah. We'll just never know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am really inclined to think that it was one of the first theories that you've introduced.
That made most sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I like the one with
the wind
thing, where they got panic attacks and confused and
that was I think there were 2 winds, weren't there? There was the catatonic wind.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, wave sounds. That's the one. Yeah, I think
those 2, the wind and the sounds, I think sound the most plausible to me.
I would say so.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. We solved it for you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
It is a weird one. I became aware of this when I watched a film called the Dyatlov Pass incident years ago. It was like a horror film. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. But it takes the theory of it being something to do with the military. So this is set in modern day. People are going back over what happened to the Dyatlov Pass incident, and then they get caught up in some sort of weird paradox where they find like a bunker in the side of the mountain, go into it, and they discover that the military have been doing these weird tests on people, and they have these tests done on them, and then they get thrown back into the past, and it's almost like they are the group, the Dyatlov group. So it's like a kind of cycle that keeps going around.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
That's
was
what
all right.
happened.
It was
But that's how
okay.
I became aware of it. I've heard of it before.
Yeah, no, I just
But there we
listened to
are.
a podcast and they covered it. So
That was very good.
yeah, it
Very
was.
frustrating.
Yeah, but also I feel like
I
this
didn't want
one
it to
is-
go on too long, but there's so much.
Yeah, I feel like this one is interesting to speculate over because of like it could have been like any of those theories or
It's a bit
something
like
completely
anything.
different.
It's a bit like the Isdal woman, isn't it?
yeah,
Like-
that one. Yeah, that one was.
Well, that's
Yeah.
very good, Emily. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Thank you. Oh, well, I'm glad. I just didn't want it to get too much, and I was trying to like cut it down because
But
there's a lot.
you did a really good job, though. And it's still very informative.
Oh, thank
I
you.
think.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I left like stuff out, and I'm sure there's people out there that have got other theories. So
Please
if you
let us
do,
know.
get in touch.
Ooh,
Yeah, let us know.
Get in touch. Let us know
Ooh.
what you think.
Definitely.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I will post some of the photos that are available
Yeah.
on the
that's good.
Instagram.
Definitely. Check it out.
Yeah,
June and Sin.
that you can see.
Podcast.
They're
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google them now.
Yeah,
When
I
we
want to
finish this, I'm gonna
Definitely.
Google them.
Yeah, they are very interesting.
I'm gonna have a look.
What, right now?
Well, no, like yeah, but after we
Well, I
finish
don't-
recording.
I hope it was all right, even with like the delay that we seem to have an issue with. Hopefully
Yes.
lockdown will be over soon and we'll actually be able to do
Literally
it
cannot
properly
wait for that
again.
to happen. Yeah, it's just been
Mhm.
nightmare.
Well, if you're still listening through the
It's been
delays,
so much fun.
then thank you.
Yeah. Bear with us. We'll
Yeah,
fix
thank
it.
you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we're not gonna fix it.
No, we'll
Won't be
fix
like
it when
it
we actually can do it in person.
Mm. Not too far off, hopefully.
Oh my
No,
god.
hopefully not.
But anyway, thank you for listening. Whose turn is it next week?
Joe.
Yours. Ooh.
I already have a
Interesting.
case.
Do you know what you're gonna do? Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Is it a secret?
I mean, you're not gonna research it, so I can say.
But then the listeners could research it and then not listen to the podcast.
Okay, well, I can say off the not record. What is it called? Off the recording.
Yeah, you'll tell us off the recording. So
That's how you say it.
Okay, so we'll discuss that after the recording.
Without
Yeah,
all of
so-
you listening.
Thank you for listening.
yes,
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you very much. So goodbye from